God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Well, good morning.
Good morning.
And happy fourth Sunday of Advent. You are the faithful ones. Everybody else, they're waiting for tonight and they're waiting for Christmas Eve. But here you are being faithful to the Advent tradition. And it's a tradition in this day that we take a look at one of the major players in all of the Christian story, and that is Mary. And you just heard Pam read Mary saying, "Here am I, the servant of the Lord. Let it be with me according to your word." No one, including Mary, could have guessed what a pain that was going to be. Think about this young child who gets visited by an angel and decides to go with the flow, as it were, that what that did for the entire rest of the sweep of her life is nothing more than miraculous. When we, as Episcopalians, sometimes look down on the devotion of Roman Catholics to Mary, we're forgetting this story. We're forgetting this one simple act of ascent which caused her a lifetime of unhappiness. Just think about it, okay? First off, just to begin with, she has to be pregnant without benefit of a husband before she's married and suffer the scorn of her entire village. And if it weren't for the kindness of Joseph, if it weren't for that one man's kindness, she would have been outcast forever. Just start there. Then let's go a little further. And it comes time to have this child, and she's got to travel. And not only does she have to travel, but she travels to it. And I heard this the other day, people say, well, there's no room at the inn, like there was some Holiday Inn waiting in Bethlehem. No. What you did is you went to the home of your family. And there was no room with the family. So they said, okay, we'll put her in the back with the animals. So she has to deliver a child out in the back of the animals. Now, I don't know if you saw, but before I came over here this morning, I saw pictures from about 1:45 this afternoon in Bethlehem. And people are in parkas. It's cold. And she's giving birth to this child in the most unsanitary of conditions. And then Joseph comes by and says, Mary, I got good news and bad news. The good news is the child seems to be okay. The bad news is there's a bunch of shepherds out here that want to see you. This is on the day of the birth of the child. Now, for those of you who have had the joy and or heartache of birthing a child, I'm sure you didn't want a bunch of strangers. Okay? I'm not making this up. And we haven't even gotten to the first year of the child's life. Now, we don't hear much about him after that. They take him to the temple. They do all the things that a good Jewish family would do until he's 12, when this child, now, one assumes that Mary cared for the child and Joseph cared for the child. What does the child do? He leaves their party and goes and stays in the temple. When they finally, what kind of parents are they? Halfway back home, they realized he wasn't with them. They turn around, go back, and he's angry at them. And says, don't you know I needed to be in my father's house? Talk about rejecting your family. That's what happens when you're 12, you know? You reject your family. That's part of the rule. Now, we don't hear any more about him, but we do know this, that by the time Jesus comes out into his public ministry, Joseph is no longer there. So her husband's dead, and she's got, we can tell, because Matthew says so, 5 children. So she's a single mom with 5 kids, okay? And what does she do? She follows around after Jesus. The first hint we get that all is not well in that department is the wedding at Cana of Galilee, where she comes and says, Jesus, you're Messiah, they're running out of wine. And he says, Mom, go away. I'm not kidding, that's what it says. Get out of here. But he does what she wants anyway. And then she gets the pleasure, dubious as it is, to wander behind this child of hers while he's preaching, while he's teaching. And she stays with him, best we can tell, all the way to the joy of watching him die on the cross. Now, I know that it is wrong in the order of things for one to survive their children. But to survive your child and watch him suffer and be jeered at and scorned the way she did had to have been heartbreaking. She had to have wept so many tears of bitterness at that point. And we don't hear from her again. He's resurrected. We don't see a mom and son reunion. He goes to the disciples, he goes to Mary Magdalene, he goes to the other Mary. He does a lot of stuff, but we see nothing of that relationship, and then he leaves. Little did that young girl know that when she said, "Let it be to me as you have said," that she was signing up for that. And she's got to be like so many women that are in this world, such a strength, such a support in the times when things are tough and the times when the husband is gone. She has to be a model for all women. We celebrate today her being willing to begin this journey, and it brings to mind for me the number of times and the number of ways that all of us have been called and thought, well, that's a good idea, and followed it. Myself, I felt called to the priesthood. I thought, well, that's a good idea. Now here I am at the other side of that thing, and I can tell you, there are some really hairy moments in there. I did not know, nor does anybody when they sign up for that duty, what that's going to be really. And I think that's true of each and every one of you. You don't know whether it's being a mom, or being a dad, or being a soccer coach, or being a doctor, or being a lawyer, or being an Indian chief. You just don't know until you get into it what it's going to do to you. Think about this. The reason you're here today is because you know what I'm talking about. And God did not abandon you along the way. The reason you're here is because somewhere along the line you figured out that with God you could make it. That it wasn't going to be easy, but it was going to be okay. Think about the number of times that you have been lifted up by that God who refuses to leave you. And give thanks for Mary, for her modeling for us what it means to say yes to the call that God offers. Amen.